Tonight, you will heat something up without thinking twice about it. A pan on a stove, a microwave humming for 90 seconds. Maybe just boiling water for pasta. It feels like nothing. A small, forgettable act, but the real answer to why you do this is far stranger than habit or taste. It reaches back further than agriculture, further than language, further than almost anything else that makes you human. Pritching. Because the moment your ancestors started cooking their food wasn't just a lifestyle choice. It rewired your body, it rewired your brain, and without it, you might not exist at all. So what actually happened, and why does it matter tonight when you flip that switch on the stove without even looking at it? Start with your body as it is right now. Your brain burns through roughly 20% of your daily energy. Pritching. 20% for an organ that makes up only about 2% of your body weight. That's an extraordinary cost. No other primate spends that much fuel on thinking, so where did that fuel come from? Chimpanzees, your closest living relatives, have brains a third the size of yours. They spend most of their waking hours chewing, 6 hours a day, sometimes more. Just grinding raw plants, tough leaves, fiber stems, through molars built like millstone. Pritching, their gut is long and complicated, built to slowly extract what little energy raw food gives up. Your gut is nothing like that. It's short, it's simple. It's almost embarrassingly inefficient compared to a chimpanzee's if you tried to survive on raw food alone. So how did you end up with a small gut and an enormous brain when every other primate has the opposite trade-off? Pritching. In 1995, two anthropologists, Leslie Aiello and Peter Wheeler, proposed an answer that became known as the expensive tissue hypothesis. Their idea was simple. The gut and the brain are both metabolically expensive organs. You can't afford to have both of them large. Something had to shrink for something else to grow. For your ancestors, the gut shrank, and the brain grew. But that only pushes the question back one step further. A smaller gut can't process raw food efficiently. Pritching. So how did your ancestors get enough energy to fuel a growing brain while losing the digestive machinery that raw food demands? This is where the real reframe begins. In 2009, the primatologist Richard Wrangham published a theory that reshaped how scientists think about human origins. He called it the cooking hypothesis. His claim was direct, almost startling in its simplicity. Cooking did not just make food taste better. Cooking is what made you human. Here's the logic. Pritching heat breaks things down before your body has to. It denatures proteins. It softens plant fibers. It bursts starch granules, unlocking the calories trapped inside. Cooked food takes less energy to chew, less energy to digest, and delivers dramatically more usable calories per bite than the same food eaten raw. Wrangham didn't just theorize this, he tested it using something surprisingly small and unglamorous: pythons. Pritching. Working with the biologist Rachel Carmody at Harvard, Wrangham ran an experiment on mice and pythons, feeding them identical foods, some raw, some cooked, some ground, and some whole. The results were consistent and striking. Animals fed cooked food gained significantly more weight than animals fed the same raw food, even when calorie counts on paper looked the same. Cooking wasn't just changing taste, it was changing how much energy the body could actually extract. Now scale that up. Pritching. Imagine you're an early hominin, roughly 2 million years ago, on the edge of the African savanna. Your food is raw, tough roots, fibrous tubers, occasional scavenged meat, sinewy and difficult to break down. You spend most of your day chewing just to survive. Then, at some point, something changes. Nobody knows the exact moment. There was no single flash of insight, no character in this story who invented fire on purpose. Pritching. But somewhere, your ancestors began controlling flame instead of only fleeing from it. Where's the evidence? One of the strongest clues comes from a cave in South Africa called Wonderwork Cave. In 2012, the archaeologist Francesco Berna and his team analyzed ash and burned bone fragments deep inside the cave, over 1 million years old. The burning wasn't the kind caused by wildfire sweeping through from outside. It was concentrated, localized, consistent with a controlled hearth, deep inside a cave where lightning strikes don't reach. That's evidence of hominins, likely Homo erectus, deliberately managing fire, far earlier than many scientists had assumed, and Homo erectus is exactly the species Wrangham points to as the turning point. Around 1.9 million years ago, something happened to the human body plan. Brain size jumped, body size increased. Teeth got smaller. Pritching. Guts got shorter, visible in the narrower rib cages preserved in the fossil record. Legs got longer, built for endurance walking and running rather than tree climbing. Every one of those changes lines up with a diet that had suddenly become easier to digest. Think about what that actually means for a moment. A smaller gut is a body betting everything on a food source that delivers energy efficiently. That's an enormous evolutionary risk, unless something had already made food dramatically easier to break down. Cooking was that something. But here's where the story gets more interesting than just calories. Because cooking didn't just change your digestion, it changed your entire way of life. Raw food, chewed all day, doesn't leave much room for anything else. If you're spending 6 hours a day just extracting enough calories to survive, there's little time left for socializing, for tool making, for teaching the next generation anything beyond how to find food. Cooking freed up hours, actual, measurable hours every single day. What do you do with reclaimed time when you're an early human standing at the edge of a fire that took less effort to eat around than a raw meal ever did? You talk, you watch. You wait together for meat to finish cooking, and in that waiting, something social starts happening that raw foraging never allowed. Some researchers argue that the hearth itself became humanity's first shared space. Not the cave, not the tree, the fire. A place where people gathered at a predictable time, ate together rather than alone, and had unstructured hours to fill with something other than chewing. Some anthropologists suggest this created the earliest conditions for extended social bonding, for storytelling, for the kind of complex group cooperation that raw food-eating primates simply don't have time to develop. Is that provable beyond doubt? No. The deep past rarely offers certainty, but the pattern fits. Every uniquely human behavior, extended childhood, complex language, cultural transmission of knowledge across generations requires energy and time that a raw diet doesn't leave you. Now here's the counterintuitive twist, the part that flips the story on its head. You might assume that once your ancestors discovered cooking, it was purely a triumph, more energy, bigger brains, an unstoppable rise toward modern humanity. But cooking also made your body weaker in one very specific way. It made you dependent right now to imagine surviving purely on raw food, the way wild chimpanzees do. Not raw vegetables from your fridge, softened by selective breeding over thousands of years of agriculture. Truly wild, fibrous, difficult raw plants, the kind your ancestors would have found on the savannah. You couldn't do it. Not really. Not for long. In 2011, Rachel Carmody's follow-up research found that mice fed strictly raw diets, even nutrient-dense raw meat, lost weight compared to mice fed the same food cooked, triching your gut. Over nearly 2 million years of evolving alongside fire has become so specialized for cooked food that raw food alone often isn't enough anymore, no matter how much of it you eat. That's the twist. Cooking didn't just give your ancestors an advantage, it became a biological requirement. You are quite literally dependent on a technology your ancestors invented long before written history, long before agriculture, long before anything you'd recognize as civilization. Every other species on Earth eats what nature hands it, exactly as nature hands it. You cannot. Your ancestors traded self-sufficiency for a bigger brain, and the trade became permanent, written into the shape of your gut and the size of your jaw, which brings the story back to tonight and to that stove you flip on without thinking. When you microwave leftovers, when you boil water for rice, when you sear something in a pan, you're not performing some optional modern convenience. You're completing a process your body has depended on for nearly 2 million years. Every meal you cook is a direct continuation of that first hearth, that first moment control over fire, turned into control over your own biology. This is part of why raw food diets, popular in certain wellness circles, are so difficult to sustain long-term. It's not a failure of willpower. Your digestive system, shaped by nearly 2 million years of cooked food, is often not built to extract enough energy from raw plants and meat alone. What feels like a purely personal health choice is running directly against evolutionary history. It's also part of why the smell of something cooking triggers such a specific, almost universal comfort. Slow roasted meat, bread baking, onions softening in a pan. That response isn't random. It's ancient circuitry wired into a brain that evolved expecting the payoff cooking reliably delivers. Think, too, about how much of human culture still centers on the same basic ritual your ancestors built at that first fire. Family dinners, holiday feasts, restaurants, dinner parties, barbecues with friends. You still gather around cooked food at a predictable time for social bonding, almost exactly the way Homo erectus likely did nearly 2 million years ago. The hearth changed. The impulse never did. There's something worth sitting with here. So much of what makes you feel human, connection, conversation, culture, shared meals, traces back not to language or tools first, but to something as simple as learning to control fire and cook food. Scientists still debate the exact timeline. Some argue cooking became habitual closer to 500,000 years ago, later than Wrangham's original estimate. Triching. The evidence from Wonderwork Cave shows controlled fire use, but proving it was used specifically for cooking, rather than warmth or protection from predators, is harder to pin down with certainty. This is genuinely contested territory in paleoanthropology, and the debate isn't settled. But whichever timeline is right, the underlying pattern holds. At some point, your ancestors stopped just eating what the world gave them raw and started transforming it. And that transformation didn't just feed a growing brain. It built the social, cultural foundation for everything you now consider distinctly human. So tonight, when you turn that stove on without thinking, you're not just making dinner. You're completing a chain of behavior that stretches back nearly 2 million years to a species standing at the edge of a fire, discovering that the world tastes different and gives more once you stop eating it exactly as you find it.